I love it. I love it. Well, welcome everyone. It's Wednesday. Welcome to Real Fellas Talk Sports. And I'm with my distinguished gentleman this evening, and we're going to chop up another week of sports. And I can't wait. I am your host, Chuck Snowden. And before we get started, let me go around the panel and introduce the group, the very knowledgeable folk. I'm going to start with the dancingest dude I know, Mr. Michigan Park himself, Earl. Go Rush. Good evening, Earl. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Charles. Thanks for the hype. And I'm not really Michigan Park, but thanks for the hype.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, let me get to the other one. Maybe he's Mr. Michigan Park. One of my longtime friends, my St. Anthony's High School graduate. I'll tell you how good Larry was as an athlete in our neighborhood. In our production meeting the other night, Earl said, "You know what? I think Deion Sanders might have been better than Larry Abels."
Yeah, it was.
Lord, that is a hell of a bar. Mr. Larry Abels, good evening. How are you, sir?
That's good. I think you said Cornelius Green was.
Oh, that's what you said,
Cornelius Green.
But both of them were, no doubt about it. How you doing, Chuck?
I'm wonderful. Now, look, last, but believe me, not least, he represents part of the country, the middle part of our country, Mr. David Burnett, straight out of Indianapolis, Indiana, Circle City. Mr. Burnett, who has ties to Washington, D.C. as well. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great and just happy to be back this week. Want to talk about a whole host of things this week, and I know you will direct it. So I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, we're going to get into it, and we're glad you're back this week. All right. Well, look, we will get to Colorado. We will get to Deion Sanders, but let's start out by talking about the National Football League. And what I want to do this week, I think I want to just focus on 3 games. And then we can talk about other things that you all want to talk about. But and the first of those, the 3 games are Baltimore and Cincinnati, the Miami Dolphins and New England Patriots game, and then the Washington Commanders in Denver. Sorry. So
don't be sorry. The Commanders.
Wait, hold on.
The Commanders are 2-0.
But how did we come to picking that game? Is it because we all have DC ties? Is that the reason why?
That's correct.
Oh, yes, that's part of it. And I'm hosting, and it is my favorite team. So
there you have it.
Well, let's talk about the Baltimore-Cincinnati game. And I'm going to start with you, David. So I really like Baltimore. Cincinnati's obviously strong. Should the folks within Cincinnati right now, given their performance over the last 2 weeks, losing to Cleveland and now losing this weekend to the Ravens, should they be concerned? Is there an issue? I even heard Jamar Chase, their star receiver, wasn't happy with his targets. Is there a concern in Cincinnati right now, David? And what do you think of that game?
I think there should be concern. There's something wrong with Joe Burrow right now. He's passing poorly. He's hurt. And, all the hype over Joe Burrow over the last couple of years, maybe it was premature. So the history of the Cincinnati Bengals is mixed. They've been to the Super Bowl. They've never won the Super Bowl. The hopes in that Crescent City have been high, but sorry, sometimes maybe, the time is up, and that may be now. Cincinnati needs Joe Burrow to be healthy. They need a happy Chase receiving passes, and right now they don't have that, and they could fall back because this year there are a lot of teams that are uncertain about where they're going to be. So Cincinnati's just one of them.
Yeah, they started out last year at 0-2, and they straightened the ship. But I was just curious in terms of what your thoughts were, Larry. That Baltimore Ravens team, they added some weapons on that team, and from this kid, the Zay Flower kid, the receiver, they added Odell. Mark Andrews was back this week. What did you think of that game? And could the Ravens be the AFC representative in the Super Bowl?
Well, I think they got a chance at it. That was a pretty good game. Chase was held to 5 receptions for like 31 yards.
Yeah.
They made up with Higgins. Higgins had a pretty big game, but still, when you hold Chase down like that, and Burrows does look like he's not 100% or something. I can excuse him losing against Baltimore, not against Cleveland though. Right. But he doesn't look. Something seems wrong, and I saw him limping off the field. Pretty good game. They need to be concerned. 0-2. I think anytime you're 0-2, you have to be concerned.
Yeah, Cleveland is his kryptonite. He's got a losing record against Cleveland and yet has a good record against Kansas City. So it's weird with Cleveland. But how about you, Go? Any thoughts on that game, the Ravens and Cincy? And do you think that the Ravens could be the AFC, with all the weapons they've added, an AFC Super Bowl representative?
I thought the game was okay. I wouldn't be mad if I missed it. I'm not glad that I saw it. As far as the Ravens, do they have a chance? Slim to none. To be the champions? To go all the way? No, they don't have a chance to go all the way. They have a chance because they play the same amount of games as everybody else does. So everyone has a chance of competing. But they don't have a chance.
Well, I'll bite. Who do you think we'll get into this later, but who do you think might be the AFC? Just early? I know it's early in the season. Just what's your spidey sense tell you that could be the AFC representative in the Super Bowl?
So what I've seen so far, I would say the Chiefs. The Chiefs.
Yeah. Okay.
You want me to elaborate on why, or
elaborate on why, because the Chiefs haven't looked good to me so far this year.
I was wondering about the Bieniemy.
The teams are like, okay, I'm trying to keep my responses short because we're trying to keep the show short, but you want me to elaborate. The team that I think that might be able to be in the running right now, for what I see from the AFC, is Miami, and Miami wouldn't be able to beat the Chiefs. So
that's the next game we want to talk about is the Miami Dolphins against the Patriots, and we'll get to that in a second. And before we do, you mentioned Kansas City, and David, because I know you monitor this stuff, and we've had some interesting debates on the show about it. But Mr. Patrick Mahomes signed his contract this week. Were you surprised it wasn't bigger?
No, it's an extension. No, I'm not surprised, and it's not a long extension. I think, keep in mind, most of it's guaranteed. I think all of it's guaranteed, the extension, $200 and some million. It essentially puts him a little past Joe Burrow as the highest paid quarterback, but it also gives enough flexibility that when it's real contract time, he will get probably upwards of $75 million a year. I'm not surprised at all. And Kansas City's being responsible. And when they do these extensions, it actually works in the favor of the team in terms of the salary cap. So Kansas City wouldn't have done that unless they had the capability of doing that and that it worked to their favor.
All right. How about you, Larry? Did you have any, when you saw the signing, were you surprised that it wasn't higher than it was?
No, Kansas City did him a favor. Number one, that $210 million guaranteed is the largest in history of guaranteed money over a 4-year period. He has escalators in it that might take him up to $218 million, depending upon his performance. And on top of that, he has signed in 2020 a 10-year deal for $450 million. So he's really making out a lot better. They didn't have to do that. They had him locked in.
Yeah, good.
And it gave him flexibility to sign Jones and Kelsey. Gives them some money.
Go. You, before we move on to the Miami game, do you have any thoughts on that, or do you have anything you want to say about that?
I'm not surprised. I mean, some teams realize you just can't spend every damn dollar you have on somebody because you might need some money for somebody else. I think Kansas City's one of those teams that realize they have to spread that money around. So no, I'm not surprised that they didn't get higher than that. No.
All right. Do you think and I'm going to ask you too, Earl, before we move on. Do you think they missed Eric Bieniemy the first 2 weeks? Because their offense doesn't seem as explosive.
I don't think they miss Eric Bieniemy. They don't have Tyreek Hill anymore. They come on, you just can't lose somebody like that and not suffer from not having him play.
Well, wait just a minute. Wait just a minute,
Quickly,
Earl.
David, you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I do. First of all, they won the Super Bowl without Tyreek Hill. Let's keep that in mind. Let's not forget that. Yes, is Tyreek Hill one of the great receivers in the NFL? Of course he is. Would he have helped Kansas City? Yeah, but Kansas City won without him. I don't think it matters. Furthermore, I think the loss of Eric Bieniemy should be recognized. Kansas City is not quite the same offense that they have been. And who's also 2-0?
We're going to get to that.
Are the Washington Commanders and Eric Bieniemy. I think it's time that we give Eric Bieniemy his shine. He's a pretty darn good offensive coordinator who's been overlooked and overshadowed by a very good head coach. Now it's his time to prove that he can do something. Furthermore, Kansas City is still a powerful team, and Tyreek Hill has nothing to do with it.
Larry, do you have any comments about that?
I think they missed Tyreek Hill in game one. They missed Kelsey too.
Yeah.
So they didn't look good that game at all. Last week, Kelsey came back. Like David said, they won last year without Hills. But no, one game is too small a sample, so I don't think we can draw any conclusions.
All right.
I think the jury's still out on the enemy so far, whether they miss him or not.
All right. Let's get into the next game. The next game I want to talk about is the Miami-New England game. And we talked about, you guys mentioned Tyreek Hill. They got a 5'10 Tyreek Hill, got a 5'10 Waddle. They've got this kid from Purdue, this Gossert or something. I had never heard of him. He's 5'10. He had 120 yards rushing. Miami almost looks like, and again, this panel remembers this team, they almost look like the greatest show on turf in terms of the speed and so forth. Larry, let's start with you, Go. What do you think of that Miami Dolphins team? And what did you think of that Dolphin-Patriot game?
I didn't think much of the game because I don't like Mac Jones. I don't like New England. They're lackluster. So when you have a lackluster team competing, you're not going to get so much of a great game out of it. So I didn't think much of the game. As far as Miami's Dolphins offense, they look explosive. They're not nowhere near like the greatest show on turf. But I guess you always have a tendency to want to do a lot of hyperbole. They're nowhere near that team, but the offense is effective, though.
A lot of speed. That's the only analogy I was making is on the speed issue. David, Mr. Belichick is 25-28 without Mr. Brady. Do you think that's hurting his legacy? And what did you think of the game? And how do you like Miami?
Let me start with Belichick. Belichick's legacy is solid. How many other coaches have won 6 Super Bowls? The answer is 0. Furthermore, Tom Brady was an excellent quarterback. Is a sure enough Hall of Famer. But the 3 of those Super Bowls weren't on Tom Brady at all. It was on the fact that New England was a very well-coached, complete team, having basically 1 star. Miami is an outstanding team, provided Tua doesn't get hurt.
Right.
Tua, everybody talks about his so-called lack of arm strength. We're into picking apart, small pieces of somebody's attribute. All I know is that for several years, when Tua was at Alabama, he was the golden child, and he was supposed to be a savior for the NFL. He gets to Miami, and we want to pick him apart. He's too small. His arm strength is not there. Blah, 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 blah. He gets hurt. Blah, 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 blah. All he does is seem to help the team win. And if he doesn't get hurt, Miami's a dangerous threat to get to the Super Bowl.
They're a fast team, man. That Miami team is fast. I don't know how that's going to play in January in the cold weather, but right now they look really fast. Larry, you kind of hipped us to Miami a year ago until Tua got hurt. What do you think of Miami? What did you think of that game? And does New England to you lack any star power on defense and or offense? I don't see anybody that's attractive to me. So what are your thoughts?
On the Patriots team?
Yeah.
Okay, well, first back to Miami, I think they're a threat, just like most of these teams. If their quarterback stays healthy, I mean, anybody can get hurt.
Sure.
Tua has the history from last year, so I expect them to do well. I thought they were a good team last year, as you mentioned. I'm glad you remembered that.
Yeah.
With respect to Miami's played. New England has played two real tough games. They had the Eagles in a game, and they lost that 25-20, and they put a good showing this week against Miami. 3-point game or some 7-point game this week. So I'll give them some credit for showing up with their lack of offensive firepower and lack of stars that we know. They seem to have shown up the first 2 weeks. I don't know any teams that could have beaten those two teams had they had to open the season against them.
Do you think Belichick, again, he's 25-28 without Brady, do you think that hurts his legacy at all?
Oh, it's not going to hurt his legacy, but I mean, certainly you take away Brady and not have a replacement for him, that's going to hurt anybody's record. I think his standings are set, but, a big part of his success obviously was Tom Brady, no doubt about that.
Right. I wonder how patient Mr. Kraft will be with that whole Belichick situation. How about you, Earl? Do you think Belichick or Kraft would ever let Belichick go? Or would he retire?
He would retire. Well, why would he let somebody go who's won 6 world championships?
I know.
So answer your question. I don't think he would let him go. No.
David?
No. It'd be foolhardy. Why do you let one of the greatest coaches of all time go? Every coach goes through a period of time where there's a lull. The NFL is not for long, but he's had 20 plus years of success in New England. He's had a record that's unparalleled in NFL history.
I think Tom Landry and Vince Lombardi, I think they didn't necessarily,
no, neither one of them had 6 Super Bowls.
Okay.
Tom Landry was a great coach. He had 2 Super Bowls. Vince Lombardi, great coach, had 2 Super Bowls. Now, he had 5, 6 NFL championships, but only 2 of them were Super Bowls.
Right.
So is Bill Belichick past his prime? Of course not. I think at some point, great teams go through lulls. Mike Tomlin has had 17 seasons as a head coach, never had a losing season, but he's only won 1 Super Bowl. You have to look at the whole picture, the entirety of his coaching career and all of these coaches. And I think when all is stacked up, Bill Belichick ranks number 1 all time. He's not going anywhere. And Mr. Kraft would be a fool to find somebody else who can do the same.
All right. Well, look, let's get to the third game. The Washington Commanders and the Denver Broncos. First of all, let's just say it, and you alluded to it early, David. The Commanders are 2-0. They came back from a 21-3 or 21-7 deficit to pull that game out. Sam Howell is 3-0 since he's been a starter. 1 last year and 2 this year. Bieniemy, that offense looks a lot better than, and Larry talked about that offensive coordinator last year. He never did like that guy. And this Bieniemy in the offense looks really, really good. The running back Robinson looks good and so forth. So, Earl, what you think of that Washington Commanders game? And what do you think of the Commanders right now? And are we still worried about Denver?
I'm not worried about Denver. Denver doesn't have any talent, and whether the Russell Wilson lovers want to believe it or not, he's on a downward spiral. I mean, he doesn't have a great offensive line. He doesn't have any talent with him or anything, but he's still not the Russell Wilson that I know him as.
Right.
I don't think much of the Washington Redskins. So you can move on.
That's fine.
The Washington Commanders, my mistake. I respect the name.
Yeah. David, what do you think of that game, Denver and Washington? And are you started to form an opinion about Russell, meaning maybe he has lost it? I don't know.
First of all, let's put this in perspective. I'm going to start with the Washington Commanders first. I think right now you're seeing a resurgence in interest and concern and care for a team that's been downtrodden for more than 20 years thanks to the woeful ownership of Dan Snyder. Let's start there. I've never been an outright Washington Redskin Commanders, Washington football team fan, but I am a member of that community. My children are there. So I do have an interest and care about the team. I think it's time for that franchise to uplift itself, and I think that's what we're seeing. Eric Bieniemy is doing a pretty good job as offensive coordinator, and I'm hoping all the best for the team. Now, let me get to the Denver Broncos.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson has actually played fairly well if you look statistically, but the storyline is such that he's not going to make it because media types and others have decided it's his time is up. When in reality, he had one bad season, and people just don't like him. Let me tell you what the real problem is with Denver Broncos. They got rid of a lot of players, and they brought in a new coach. They blamed it on the previous coach who they fired mid-season. But I'm going to say something that's somewhat controversial. The reality is the head coach, Sean Payton, is grossly overrated. Grossly overrated. He's supposed to be this coaching wizard. Baloney. He won a Super Bowl with New Orleans. He's not going to win again. And he's supposed to be the one to turn things around. Why don't we put the onus on the Broncos where it belongs, at the head coach? He's done a terrible job so far. He's supposed to have changed everything, and he hasn't done it. Now, I'm here to say what's Denver is going to look like. There's a whole lot of hype about Russell Wilson being the fall guy. Well, I tell you, it's Sean Payton. Sean Payton's going to have to show me, because his last few years in New Orleans weren't that great.
Yeah. Larry, okay, your Commanders, Larry, can I be as optimistic as I am? Do you need to temper me just a little bit?
I think
what's your thoughts about that game and about the Commanders in general?
Need to be cautiously optimistic. They've had a relatively easy schedule, but they won the 2 games. Tried to lose a Denver game. Tried to lose both of them, actually. They won. I'm not as sold on Bieniemy. David, I don't know if you've had a chance to see him. He seems very pass happy with a quarterback that's not quite ready for prime time. He had Howell threw 30 times in the first half Sunday. And I'm like, run the freaking ball, run the ball. Once they started running the ball, I think he only might have thrown 7 or 9 times in the second half.
Right.
But I would like to see him mix it up a little bit more. And he did the same thing against the Cardinals. And I'm sitting there thinking, you don't have Mahomes, you don't have Tyreek Hill, you don't have Kelsey. Even though he has some decent receivers, but Mahomes is who he doesn't have. I'm hoping he adjusts to the talent that he has. Cautiously optimistic, but they all have some big boys because they're Buffalo this week, so that'll be a pretty good test.
Right, that's a good
test.
Charles, Go ahead, go.
Well, I was going to talk about Denver before too. As far as Denver, I just think they're not that good a team. I'm not sure what Wilson has left in the tank, and I'm not sure what type of magic Peyton. He's like David said, he's been anointed. Once you win a Super Bowl, you're kind of anointed a genius. But I'm not sure about him either.
Right.
All I can say is it's been 14 years since he won that Super Bowl. Okay, let's just keep that in mind.
Go.
Look, this is a little quick observation. There are only 2 teams that I know of where that Hail Mary would have worked against. It would have been either the Jets or the Washington Commanders. Those are the only 2 teams where that Hail Mary with 3 defenders had a chance to knock the ball down with 3 defenders knock the ball up and up and up. Only the Redskins or the Jets could that happen to. And nothing changed with the Redskins. First of all,
Can I say this?
Huh?
Can I just say this? I'm waiting for one day. I mean, this has been 3 years. At some point, give the Washington Commanders / whatever their name is some credit. I mean, give them some credit. But you're not willing to give them any, Earl. Come on.
I'm not. Look, they don't. You get it when you deserve it. First of all, they're just showing that there's all kind of parity in the league. So they won 2 games.
Okay,
They haven't played nobody. They played nobody.
Let me give a plug for our NFL game line, and also on the Real Fella Sports Network. So every week when I get to pick teams, I put Washington on there, particularly if I think Washington has a chance to win, because I think Earl will pick against me. I've had them on there twice this year, the first 2 weeks of this year.
And he went against you.
No, he didn't. He picked them both times. So I have to
I play to win. I don't play emotionally like some people that have appeared on the show. Some people let their emotions affect their decisions. I'm not one of them.
Oh, okay.
Well, I believe that, but prior to this year, he never picked them.
They were down, Errol. They were down 21-7, 21-3, and came back.
Who did they play, Charles?
That's pretty impressive.
They played Denver.
Well,
not to mention, as you all, I haven't talked to David, but the others on the team agree, that was pass interference on the 2-point play. That was an abysmal call.
I agree.
But
there was also a bad call in the play before that.
Okay, well, so the bad. We both agree that there's bad officiating took place in the game.
They had a face mask on Wilson when they stripped the ball from him. They missed that call too.
I can understand David getting me tired of bashing the Redskins for 3 years because I've been bashing them for 72.
Before the show started.
I've been bashing them since 72, and I'm not going to stop because they're just horrible. They're horrible. They're horrible.
Now, if they go to the Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl, maybe that can happen with the new karma of the team, and they do have a refreshed karma. You have to admit that, right, Earl?
David, by the time that they do that, we won't be here. We won't, so we don't even need to discuss it. We won't be here.
No, you may not be here.
You ain't gonna be here. You ain't gonna be here by the time they go.
One thing I'd like to say about Washington before we move on from that game is that defensive line we have. I know they didn't show up much early in that game, but late in the second half of that ball game with Chase Young back, that defensive line showed up and they looked good. I think we have one of the better defenses.
I want to see that defensive line show up when they play Philadelphia, when they play somebody with a legitimate offensive team. That's when you see they haven't done
it. Beat them, Earl. They beat them last year when they were undefeated. That same Commanders team beat them last year.
Are we talking about last year's team, or are we talking about this
year? We're not. No, we're not.
Okay,
We're talking about this year's
back
team.
to last year when we're talking about this year.
That's a good point. All right. Well, listen, anything else? Oh, before we leave the National Football League, what I'd like to ask you guys real quick, I know it's early, but let's do it. Give me your top 3 AFC teams and NFC teams so far, your top 3. And I'll start with you, David.
Right now, Baltimore, Miami, Kansas City in the AFC. In the NFC, San Francisco, which is clearly showing that they are pretty darn good and that Brock Purdy is pretty good. Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. So San Francisco, Dallas, and the Eagles in the NFC.
In that order?
In no order, just those 3.
Okay.
How about you, Go? You ready?
My order is San Francisco, Philadelphia Eagles, and Dallas. That's my order.
Yeah.
Top 3. And the AFC, I would say Kansas City, Miami, and the Ravens.
Yep. Yeah.
You must have been looking at my sheet, Earl,
The same ones
because you
David
got
said.
it
Larry?
exactly right. You got it
I
Anything
have the
exactly
same
right.
teams, but I have a different order. And
Right.
I'm going to look at, since it's only 2 undefeated teams in the AFC, I'm going to rank them 1 and 2. I'm going to say Miami's number 1 and Baltimore's number 2. I'm picking Kansas City on past reputation. They have not looked good, but it's a bunch of 1-1 teams. And I have a feeling that
what's interesting? We've done this show for 3 years. I think that might have been the first time all 4 of us have done an exercise like that, and all 4 of us picked the same.
We had the same teams,
same 16,
but not necessarily in order.
Teams I had too.
Yeah, but not necessarily in order.
Well, I didn't put them in order.
It's pretty obvious.
My NFC teams are in order. So AFC in order: Miami, Baltimore, and Kansas City. NFC, which has 7 undefeated teams, but I'm going to pick the top 3 are going to be the 49ers, the Cowboys, and then the Eagles.
Yeah.
So David and I flip-flop one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he said no order. That's right.
They're all about the same at this point.
I would if Dak wasn't shaky, Dallas would be my number 1 team. And the only reason why I picked Philadelphia over Dallas because Philadelphia has a better quarterback.
Well, let's just, before we get off of this, Brock Purdy, who has been bashed by this panel, at least some of you on this panel, not myself. I always like to make a call back. I said Brock Purdy was pretty good last season, and he's just a steady guy. Is he going to be? He's kind of like, I know once again somebody's going to say, Burnett, you crazy. Remember when Tom Brady, 4th round, 5th round draft pick, came in out of nowhere, whatever the draft round was, out of nowhere, and we just thought he was a game manager. I'm not saying Brock Purdy is Tom Brady, but the parallels are very eerily similar. At one point, we didn't give Tom Brady any dap, but now he's the so-called GOAT. I think Brock Purdy, who is undefeated as a starter, is pretty good, and I'm just going to leave it at that. No matter the fact that he was Mr. Irrelevant.
Your point is valid. He's been solid.
Here's what I say to that.
Waiting.
If all the young quarterbacks, first year or 2-year players, were on San Francisco's team, some of them would have been considered rookie of the year or one of the best in the NFL because of the team they played with. Anybody can look good with San Francisco's offense.
Oh, well, one of them did not and got traded away.
Except for Zach.
Trey Lance was the same player that you're talking about, and he looked horrible with the 49ers.
How much did he play?
Horrible.
What are you talking
He
about?
played enough. He played enough to show that he wasn't
like
that
2
good.
games.
Not really. He really did. Two things, David. A, he really didn't. But B, that same team with Garoppolo, whatever that guy's name is, did a Super Bowl. I mean, Earl has made a good point. That team is a really good team, period. And if you just don't screw it up, the quarterback.
Trey Lance is not as good as Brock Purdy, period. Yeah. Let's just be real about that.
Trey Lance, did he play over 3 games all the time he's been there?
Trey Lance is not that good.
Brock played himself into a heck of a position.
I put it this way: you put Chicago's quarterback behind San Francisco team.
Chicago's quarterback is terrible. He's terrible.
It might have taken a turn for the worst in Chicago. They are beating him up pretty good there.
If you take Chicago,
so before we leave the National Football League, I want to give David a chance to make a comment or two about 2 things that maybe I've been outspoken about. One is Richard, of the 3 quarterbacks, and Earl, you mentioned this earlier, Richardson, Bryce Young in Carolina, Richardson, and the third one is CJ Stroud. Of the 3 rookie quarterbacks panel, who has looked the best so far to you guys? And I'll start with you.
Go ahead.
Who looked the best so far?
Yep. Of those 3. Those are the 3.
I don't think Stroud or Richardson have outplayed each other, so I would say they about the same. Obviously, Young is not in the running at all. He's horrible.
Right. Before I get to you, David, Larry, any thoughts on those three?
The only one I saw play was Stroud. Is he the one that plays for the Texans?
Yeah. No. Yes, he plays for the Texans, correct.
He didn't look, he wasn't fantastic, but he didn't look bad to me. He had no freaking blocking.
No, he looked fine. His numbers were fine too.
And he had no blocking. He avoided a lot of sacks and all of that. He looked like he could play. Now I saw that Richardson, I was watching the highlights and he looked like he had a great start before he got hurt this week.
Right.
So I have to say he's had the best game, at least half a game out of those three.
Okay, David, the floor is yours. Out of those three,
Anthony Richardson, far and away. If the Colts had picked anybody, if let's say the Colts had gotten the number one pick, if they'd have picked any of those other guys ahead of Anthony Richardson, they'd have been ruining the day that they did that. Anthony Richardson, once he understands that you can't run over people or can't put yourself in harm's way, he will turn out to be easily the best of this group. Easily the best of this group. He's the best athlete. He has the best arm. He has the best speed. And furthermore, CJ Stroud, to me, his stats are inflated and padded. All of his stats came in garbage time. The Colts had throttled the Texans, and all they could do was pass. They played cover 2 defense, prevent defense, and he got yardage based on that. And to me, he doesn't look like he processes information well. I don't think he's that good. He's a typical Ohio State quarterback who doesn't succeed in the NFL, period.
Okay. Yeah, I have a different impression. I didn't see him play against the Ravens. The Colts. I saw him play against the Ravens, and I thought he did a great job because he had absolutely no blocking in terms of athleticism. They were like on him, like as soon as he caught the ball in the shotgun. And they still sacked him about 6 times, but he probably avoided at least that many and made a couple of plays. But their team just looked horrible to me.
Yeah.
I didn't see him
He's
play.
better than Justin Fields, CJ Stroud.
And I did see a little of the guy in Carolina. So yeah, he looked. Yeah,
Wait. What?
Stroud just looked like he was under pressure the whole time against Baltimore.
Did you say CJ Stroud was better than Justin Fields?
Justin Fields. I think CJ Stroud is better than Justin Fields.
I would agree with that.
So, well, look. Anybody else have any other comments about the National Football League?
I have one.
I know, Jordan Love.
No, thank you for bringing him up, but I was going to bring him up. Now I'm going to. Deshaun Watson. Let's keep an eye on him. He's looked bad.
Yeah,
he's looked bad, and Jordan Love looked good. I don't care that he had a couple of incomplete passes at the end of the game. He's ready to play. He's not a bum. He's a very professional quarterback. I'm just going to leave it at that.
We're going to keep an eye on it. All right. Anything else before we move on to the National Football League? You guys were absolutely terrific in terms of describing the first couple of weeks in this past weekend. No last comments. Let's get into college.
I got one more comment on Watson, like following up what David said. One thing we got to remember, he hadn't played football for 2 years. And I think it's very difficult for anybody to be away for 2 years and then come in and play. And he's obviously not the player he was 2 years ago. I'm not sure if he'll ever get it back. But it will take some time, obviously.
Karma.
I think 2 years of inactivity is hard on anybody.
All I will say about that is God bless his agent, because at the end of the day, this is a business. And his bank account has $230 million. So,
well, out of that $230 million, a lot of it's going to be paid out to chicks that he offended, and we'll just leave it at that.
All right. Let's get in. Let's get
I'm
into
sorry.
Let's get into college football.
On my part.
Let's get into college football. I mean, let's get into the Deion Sanders Colorado story. Well, look. First of all, before we get too deep into that, is he having the Obama effect? And when I say the Obama effect, the other night, my wife, who ain't never stayed up to 2:30 in her life, stayed up to 2:30 in the morning watching that game because she is all about Dion. She loves what he's doing. She's caught up in it. And I hear people who don't usually watch football, it's Dion all the time. So I'm wondering to this panel, is he having the Obama effect, meaning liked by everyone? Go.
No, he's not like that. Everyone. He's hated by just as many people as like him. So I don't know why you would think he just get the Obama effect.
Okay.
David?
All I can tell you is I had a conversation with one of my sisters earlier today. She's not a big sports fan at all. But guess what? She stayed up and watched Colorado Buffaloes and Deion Sanders. If my sister Karen can watch football, college football of all things, and get some sense out of that game and Deion Sanders, there's something going on. Furthermore, there was the number one college football game on this season was Colorado against Colorado State.
It's the fifth largest audience that ESPN has ever had for a college football game in the history of the channel. The fifth large, and that game was Colorado State late at night. Larry?
Enough
Is
said.
it having the Obama effect a little bit?
Hey, you're not going to like this. He's more like Trump. He's a massive promoter, and he gets attention. I think he's a massive promoter, self-promoter. He's very good at that. I wonder what will happen once they lose a couple of games.
Has Trump been a winner? Has Trump been a winner everywhere he's been?
I said he's a master promoter who gets attention, regardless of whether he wins or not. He gets attention. He gets free network coverage more than anybody. He doesn't even have to spend money on campaign. All the networks cover him. Everything he does. That's he's more like. I don't think Obama was quite like that. Dion does.
You know what?
Obama.
You know what's most interesting about Deion Sanders is that all the esteemed sports broadcasters and news broadcasters, they don't call him Deion. They call him Prime. They call him Coach Prime. To his face, behind his back, he's Coach Prime. If you're nicknamed and like that and anointed, you're doing something right.
But ever since he's gone, ever since he's come out of Florida, he's always gotten the media there. I mean, Jackson State brought him there.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, he knows how to promote himself. He definitely knows how to do that. I think LeVar Ball tried to be like that, but he didn't have the cachet. Prime has it.
He does.
Do you have any thoughts about that game? I thought that was a hell of a football game. Any thoughts about the game itself? I'll start with you, Larry. Any thoughts about the game itself?
I didn't even watch it. I was kind of tied up.
Oh, excuse me.
Now, to tell you the truth, I mean, I see it. I'm more interested in their game this week than last week. I was surprised because I don't know anything about Colorado State. I was surprised that the game was as close. I saw like the end of it actually, right. Overtime. I was surprised when it went to overtime. But I'm really more looking for a game against like Oregon this week and USC. Right. That's what's really going to draw my attention.
David, any thoughts on that game? And there were some decisions in that game, some decisions that most coaches wouldn't have made that I think helped win that game. One of them was he benched his starting kicker, brought in the backup kicker, and on 4th and 2 from the 2-yard line, they kicked the field goal when they were down 7. They kicked another field goal when they were down 11, and most coaches wouldn't have done that. And it turns out all those decisions were right, and they won that game. But anyway, David, any thoughts?
Well, my thought on the game, prior to the game, the big brouhaha was the Colorado State coach disrespecting Deion because he mentioned the fact that Deion does interviews with his sunglasses and hat on, blah, blah, blah. I have no problem with what the Colorado State coach did. You know why? because the
Right.
Colorado State coach was doing something for Colorado State. Nobody gives a damn about Colorado State. They don't care. Nobody knows who they are. They now do. They got 9 million eyes on them as a team, and they almost won. So the guy was doing something for his team and getting attention for Colorado State that would never have been pointed their way. Never.
So let me
So
ask
I
He's a
give him a lot of credit for that.
somebody answer this question for me. How many millions will not watch the game if that guy hadn't said what he said? They're going to watch the game anyway, weren't they? Or no?
Not necessarily.
You think him saying that made millions watch the game?
First of all, news media, sports media is always looking for an angle, and I'm not saying it's an improper. Let me finish my point.
But you don't have to do all that when I'm asking you a yes or no question. Do you think more millions watch the game?
It made a difference in maybe several million people watching additional
because he said that
for the game.
That's what you thought.
Yes, because that was the number one item when you talked about Colorado State against Colorado. The coach is disrespecting Deion. He's creating an issue that didn't need to happen. Shut up.
You know, it's interesting. I don't know the total. I think David has a point there. Earl, my impression was this is more hype too. Last week it was the guy from Nebraska. It's hype every week. It's something every freaking week.
No, but David said that this is what I got from David. Maybe this is not what he said. Maybe this is just the way that I took it. So let me clear that up. I got from what he said, from what David was saying, my comprehension was that David was not upset with the coach from Colorado State because he got the school more views.
You got it exactly right. That's exactly my point.
You said 7 million. You and Larry think 7 million might have watched.
No, I didn't say 7 million. I said I don't know how many more people. I said I don't know how many more people watched it. I just think it was part of the hype. That's all I think. I don't know what
when you say words like hype, Larry, you imply that this is all fake or not real.
Not at all. Not at all.
I don't understand when you say hype. You say it almost in a negative way, and I don't understand.
Well, you're misinterpreting it.
Well,
you're misinterpreting
it. Hold it. Was Muhammad Ali, was that hype? I mean, was that fake? Was that Trump?
Okay, I don't know if get Trump out of it. Hype is to me is promoting it. That's what it is. It's promoting it.
Okay,
and there's nothing wrong with promotion.
Yeah, that's all it is. I agree with you. And I think Colorado State's coach got in on it. I think the guy from Nebraska said something. I don't know what impact it had on adding more viewers, but it's still when somebody says something and the other side comes back and says something back to them. A lot of it is like after the game they'll shake hands. Same with Muhammad Ali. He's a great fighter and all of this.
My point that I was trying to make is I doubt there was that many more because he said what he said. David, think it was a bigger, more people watched it because he said it. I just say I don't think it was. That's all. It's no big deal.
And that's it. We have a difference of opinion on that, and it's not a major difference of opinion. I just think the fact that Colorado State, which is a non-entity in college football, a complete non-entity, they're not really respected. They got attention, and the value of that attention is a lot. They were supposed to lose to Colorado, the new reinvigorated Colorado Buffaloes, but they got on the map, and we and the rest of the media, because we're the real fellas' media, talked about the Colorado State coach poking the bear. That was the storyline of the week, over and over and over. Even national news poked the bear on that.
How good is Shakur? How good is Shakur Sanders? He took that team 98 yards. Not only did he score a touchdown, but he got 22 points. And Deion decided to take the ball first when he won the coin flip, which most coaches don't do. So what do we think of Shakir? Do you think he'll be a first round pick in the National Football League next year? Earl?
Yes.
David?
Yes. And first of all, to add to that, he will be in New York with the other four quarterbacks or three quarterbacks with the fake Heisman Trophy award. He will be one of the top candidates for the Heisman Trophy.
Larry?
I think
First round pick?
If he continues if he plays as well against the next few games, the Pac-12 competition, that's going to tell the story.
I'll tell you, Larry, you ain't bought into the whole Colorado, Shakir, Sanders situation. I can almost tell in the way you're responding tonight.
What do you want?
I think the way he's played thus far has been very good. But I want to see him play against real good defenses. I don't think he's done that yet. They haven't really had that yet. I think he's going to have it the next 2 weeks. And if he continues to play this way, yes, he will be there.
I'm disappointed that they had to go to overtime. They were favored by 24. I wasn't even impressed by that.
Well, it's a rivalry game. Sometimes in these rivalry games, things happen. I mean, that Colorado team, number 8, number 11, and the quarterback, they played great in that game. They played really, really good. So anyway.
But they ain't nobody. They haven't played anybody yet, Charles.
Okay.
They're supposed to be good.
Before we leave college football, I want to get your thoughts on a couple other bigger, big games this weekend. For example, Ohio State, and I know how you love the Big Ten, Earl. Ohio State goes to Notre Dame this weekend. Earl, who wins that game? Ohio State at Notre Dame.
Notre Dame.
David, Ohio State at Notre Dame.
That's a tough one. I think Notre Dame should win because they have a quarterback who's passed for over 10,000 yards in his college career. He is a veteran quarterback, and Notre Dame looks pretty strong with him as a signal caller. So Notre Dame should win. The game is at home, and Ohio State is still questionable at quarterback, having lost their quarterback, C.J. Stroud, to the pros.
Who's the higher ranked, Charles?
I think it's. I
think
Ohio State is 4th or 5th or something like that, aren't they?
Is it 1-5? Yeah, they're 5, and the other one's 8 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So it's close. I think Notre Dame is favorite though by 3 because it's at Notre Dame. But anyway, Larry, who do you think wins that game? Ohio State at Notre Dame.
I'm gonna say Ohio State.
The Ohio State University. How about this one? Florida State, Clemson, and Florida State is ranked 4th this week. Florida State at Clemson. Go. Who wins that game?
Florida State. Clemson is on a down.
Oh my God, they really are. David, Florida State at Clemson.
The way I phrase this is Florida State should win. Clemson. I think the problem with Clemson is they haven't bought into the new way of coaching and recruiting college football, the portal and NIL, and they're not into it yet. I've got to go with Florida State. The only reason Florida State is viable again, they've been non-viable for about 10 years.
Yes, I agree.
So Florida State should win.
Yeah, Larry. Florida State at Clemson.
Didn't Duke beat Clemson this year?
Yep.
Yes.
And didn't Florida State beat LSU?
Yes.
I'm going with Florida State.
They're ranked 4th in the nation, and Clemson's not ranked. Anything else about college football or about the Sanders situation? I got one thing I want to mention about the Sanders situation. I want to get y'all started on. So Shakir just got a $190,000 Maybach car that he is driving on campus. $190,000. Do we think that might be a little bit too much? Do you have any thoughts on that, Earl? $190,000.
I had my thoughts of why are you even asking that? What is the problem? His father's a millionaire. I'm sure he got some NIL money. What's the problem? They didn't steal the car. So what's wrong with them driving on 190? Why is that too much? I'm just asking. Why
I
is
don't know
that?
how you go. I wonder how he goes to his apartment or to his place and leaves his $190,000 car.
It's not like his father lives in the ghetto and nobody has any money, and all of a sudden this guy's driving a $190,000 car. So what's the big deal?
David, you have any thoughts? David, you have
Yeah,
any
I do. We just have to accept the fact that college football now is blatantly professional.
Right.
Caleb Williams, the Heisman Trophy winner, is on multiple national TV commercials. The kid from the Carolina Panthers was on national TV
Right,
commercials. So if Shakur Sanders is driving around in a $200,000 car, well, he's been rich his whole life, and now he's even richer with his own millions.
Yeah,
And
so
his
why
daddy's
is that?
millions and his own millions. So it is what it is.
Right. Larry, you have any thoughts on
we have
that?
to accept it.
Yeah, for some reason people want to give these guys money. I don't. It doesn't make financial sense for me for them to do that. None of them are making that type of money doing commercials. These are boosters. I saw something today, a report today that I think it was today, or maybe yesterday. I think I mentioned during one of the earlier meetings that SMU is going into the ACC and not taking any television money. So they've gone to their boosters trying to raise $200 million. Last week they raised $100 million.
In 1 week.
1 week they raised $100 million. So some people are just giving money to schools for some. I don't know why they're doing it, but $100 million in boosters.
1 week.
Remember 40 years ago when SMU was big, and they had the Pony Express with Eric Dickerson and what's the other guy?
Craig
James.
Yeah.
Craig James and Eric Dickerson. SMU was riding high, so illegal. Now they can just do it out front. They got that Texas oil money. They're going to be a school and team to be reckoned with.
Dallas
because they
market,
got
too.
the money.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, Craig James was highly overrated as well.
The Pony Express.
In college, he was pretty good. Come on, Earl. Stop.
Well, listen, we're getting near the end.
He did nothing. He was highly overrated, in my opinion.
What do you mean he did nothing? He had over 1,000 yards of rushing in college. Now, in the pros, he wasn't that good, but in college, he was pretty good.
You didn't hear me. I said in the pros, he did nothing.
All right. Well, we're getting close to
I didn't say nothing about his college thing.
I was talking about his college performance.
Sometimes people are so interested in what they have to say, they forget to listen to what people say.
Oh, as we get close to the end of the show, which we are, this is the time we all go around and perhaps have closing comments. And by the way, you guys were wonderful tonight. This was an interactive exchange, and again, one of the better shows in my opinion. So anybody have any closing comments? And I'll ask you first, Go.
I thought the show went pretty well, but I think that we should have talked baseball since it's close to the playoffs. That's not closing my comment.
Good. David, any closing comments?
I'm going to speak on behalf of all the running backs in the NFL and college football. Look, running backs have got to talk the talk and promote what they are. Nick Chubb, did you see that gross, horrifically bad injury? But running backs are just run through like meat, run through the meat grinder and not given a whole lot of credit. But who scores all the touchdowns? 40% of the touchdowns scored in the NFL are scored by running backs. Running backs just haven't told their story very well. Maybe they just need to find a new formula to promote themselves and maybe have shorter contracts. But I'm for the running back as a former running back myself, mediocre running back, sideline running back. I speak for those guys who do the garbage work and really are really most valuable players on the team.
Well said. Larry, any closing thoughts on your end?
Similar to Major League Baseball, who's getting close to their playoffs, the WNBA are in their playoffs. And I saw a great game last night with the Mystics and the Liberty. Very good game. The Liberty and the Aces in Vegas are the two, monsters in both conferences. But Washington gave them a good game last night. And unfortunately, they were eliminated. when you have some time, tune in and check out the WNBA.
WNBA. Good job. Good job. Well, look, I have a closing comment, and I'll try to make it quick. Last Friday night, I went to the University of Maryland versus the University of Virginia football game in College Park. I got to tell you, I love college pageantry and sports and football, and every town and every city has its own thing. And this particular game, because Maryland has gone to the Big Ten, they haven't played Virginia much lately, but they had played 108 times. They had a big-time rivalry. Well, at one point during the night, again, every city has its thing. It was a blackout. So all the kids wore black. Sean Merriman was on the big screen. He's a big-time linebacker who played in the pros from the University of Maryland. His nickname was Lights Out. At one point on the big screen, he said, "This is Sean Merriman, University of Maryland, Lights Out." And then it was a nighttime game, and the entire arena went dark. The field, every light in the place went out, and everybody lit their phones, and that Phil Collins song was playing in the background with the drum beat, and then the lights came on, and I thought it was cool as hell. I just love college pageantry. And on Saturdays, every city or country, it's the town around, they have these pageants, and I just thought it was great, and I enjoyed that game, even though Virginia got killed. So that was my closing comment. I just wanted to make a point about that.
By the way, can I add to that thought what you said?
Huh? What'd you say, David?
Can I add to that thought? The fact that you were willing to celebrate Maryland and they beat your Virginia Cavaliers, destroyed your Virginia Cavaliers. I'm proud of you. I'm very proud of you, Larry.
They were up 14-0 too and lost 42-14, but that's neither here nor there. Hey, look, guys, you guys were great. You guys were wonderful. As you know, I love it every Wednesday. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We super appreciate your support. Again, Larry said we have some of the shirts and stuff on sale if you want to reach out to us. We'll see you next week. Take care. Thanks.
All righty.